The desert of Aryan was endless, shining like gold under the twin suns. Its sands were not silent. They moved with the wind, humming softly during the day and singing faintly at night. The people who lived near the edges of that desert had given it many names. Some called it the Golden Sea, others called it the Living Sand, but travelers and explorers knew it as the Singing Desert. When the human colony ship landed on Aryan, the settlers thought it was just another world waiting to be tamed. The planet had breathable air, strange plants, and large regions of dry land. But soon they learned that the desert was unlike anything they had ever known. At night, when the wind passed over the dunes, it produced long, haunting sounds, almost like a choir. Some nights the sound was peaceful. Other nights it was deep and sorrowful, like a cry from the past. Rian was a scientist who had studied planetary geology for years. He had come to Aryan with one goal: to understand why the desert sang. He believed that the sound came from vibrations in the sand caused by underground formations. But deep down he felt there was more to it. Something about the rhythm of the tone seemed too precise, too organized to be random. He led a small crew of explorers. There was Mira, a young engineer who loved ancient history, and Laro, a quiet man who was good with machines but even better with sounds. Two more crew members, Parel and Dima, handled the camp setup and scanning equipment. Together they began their expedition into the deep desert, far from the safety of the colony. Their small hover vehicle glided over the dunes, leaving a thin trail behind. The heat was harsh and the light from the twin suns made everything shimmer. Yet as they moved deeper into the desert, the humming grew louder. It was no longer just the wind. It felt alive, as if the sand was speaking in a language of tones. They stopped when their scanners detected unusual readings below the surface. Mira checked the display, frowning. "These patterns are strange," she said. "They repeat every few seconds, almost like music." Ryan looked at the graph. The readings showed waves rising and falling in perfect rhythm. "Natural formations don't do that," he said quietly. "There's something under us." The crew began to set up digging equipment. They used heat drills and sound sensors to locate the strongest source of the vibrations. Hours passed. The sky turned orange as the suns lowered. When darkness came, the sound in the air changed. It became clearer, almost like a song made of countless whispers. Laro sat near the equipment, listening carefully through his headset. His face was calm but focused. "It's not random," he said. "It follows a pattern. It's repeating like a code." Ryan joined him. "A code made of sound," he murmured. "Who would make something like that here?" The desert gave no answer, but the sand beneath them began to tremble slightly as if reacting to their presence. The vibrations grew stronger. The readings on Mira's screen jumped. She stepped back quickly. "Something's happening underground," she said. Before anyone could react, part of the ground caved in. A small pit opened, revealing a layer of smooth stone below the sand. The sound they had been hearing grew louder, echoing up from the hole. It was no longer just a hum. It was a deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from the heart of the planet itself. Rian peered into the opening. He could see dark stone carved with faint lines. It looked ancient, untouched for ages. "This isn't a natural formation," he said. "Someone built this." They secured ropes and lights before lowering themselves down into the pit. The air inside was cooler. The stone beneath their boots felt strangely warm, as if energy still flowed through it. The markings on the walls glowed faintly when their lights touched them, creating soft reflections like ripples of water. Mira touched one of the symbols carefully. It gave off a soft tone, a single note that hung in the air for several seconds. Laro stepped closer and brushed his hand along another line. A second note joined the first, blending in harmony. The entire chamber seemed to respond, as if the structure itself could feel their presence. Rian looked around in wonder. "This is not a tomb made by humans," he said, "but it feels like a place of memory." They continued exploring, moving deeper into what appeared to be a collapsed tunnel. The sound inside shifted depending on where they walked. Every movement, every footstep added a new tone. It was like being inside a living instrument. The tunnel led them to a flat wall of dark stone, smooth and unbroken. When they touched it, it vibrated faintly under their hands. Ryan realized that this wall was the source of the strongest sound. It was as if something beyond it was singing. He set up his scanner to record the vibration patterns. The data showed rhythmic pulses arranged like waves of a song. Each pulse was spaced evenly, forming a clear pattern that repeated over and over. Could it be a message? Mira asked. It could, Rian replied. But from who or what? Night fell outside and the desert winds began to blow again. Through the open pit, the sound from the surface mixed with the tones from below. The result was a strange harmony that made the air tremble. It was beautiful and haunting at the same time. The team decided to rest near the entrance while Ryan studied the data. Laro sat quietly, humming softly as he listened to the faint music of the stones. Without realizing it, his humming began to match the rhythm of the desert. The notes blended perfectly. Suddenly, the symbols on the nearby wall glowed brighter. The humming in the air grew stronger, rising in pitch. Mira stood up quickly. What did you do? She asked. Laro shook his head, startled. I just followed the sound. The vibration continued for several seconds before fading back to normal. Everyone stood still, staring at the walls. The brief light had revealed more symbols, ones they had not seen before. Rian recorded everything, his mind racing. The structure responds to sound frequencies, he said. It reacts when the right tone is played. This entire place might be an ancient sound-based system. They returned to the surface the next morning. The suns rose slowly, painting the dunes with golden light. From their camp, the desert stretched in every direction. Yet now it felt different. The hum in the air carried new notes, faint but noticeable. It was as if the desert had recognized their visit. Mira looked across the endless sands. It feels alive, she said quietly. Ryan nodded. Maybe it is. That night, as they prepared their next plan, Ryan wrote in his log, We have found evidence of a structure buried deep under the singing desert. The material and design suggest advanced technology far older than anything known to humanity. The sounds we recorded show complex repeating patterns, possibly a form of communication. The structure reacts to vocal tones and frequencies. Further excavation is needed, but one thing is certain. This desert sings because something beneath it still remembers. The following day, they began setting up heavier equipment. They wanted to open a larger section of the site and find a way past the stone wall. The air around them felt charged, as if the desert itself was waiting for what would come next. As Ryan looked out at the horizon, he saw heat waves dancing across the dunes, forming shapes that almost looked like moving shadows. For a brief moment, he thought he heard a voice in the wind. It was soft and distant, repeating the same note again and again. He listened closely. The sound was not random. It was trying to match his breathing. He turned toward Laro, who was already looking up from his instruments. Do you hear that? Ryan asked. Laro nodded slowly. It's not just the wind anymore, he said. It's listening. The desert continued to hum under the twin suns, its golden dunes shimmering like a sea of light. Deep below, the hidden structure waited, its ancient voice still strong after countless ages. And somewhere beneath those sands, something that was neither dead nor alive was preparing to speak again. The morning light spread across the desert like a wave of gold. The wind was calm and the dunes shimmered gently. The hum that once seemed faint now felt closer, stronger and more alive. It was as if the desert itself had woken up after years of sleep. Ryan stood beside the excavation site, watching the horizon. He had not slept well. The sound from the underground chamber had echoed in his mind the whole night. The rest of the crew prepared the heavy machines. Mira checked the scanners and set the coordinates for the next dig. Lara was testing new sound equipment. Parel and Dima secured ropes and safety lines around the opening. Their camp looked small against the endless dunes, but the team's excitement gave it energy. Rian walked toward Laro, who was sitting near a panel full of blinking lights. Any change? He asked. Laro adjusted his headset and nodded. The sound is repeating again. Same pattern as before, but a bit faster. It feels like it's reacting to what we did yesterday. Good, Ryan said. Let's see how it reacts when we open more of the site. With careful precision, they began digging around the pit. Sand poured away as mechanical arms lifted layer after layer. The desert wind carried the dust into the air, making it look like a golden mist. Beneath the sand, the stone structure spread wider than they had imagined. It was not just one chamber. It was a massive construction buried deep under the dunes. After hours of work, they uncovered what looked like a great wall stretching across the pit. The surface was covered with more glowing lines, each one curved and connected like musical notes. In the center stood a large circular formation, smooth and seamless like a doorway made of dark crystal. Mira touched it carefully. It's warm, she said. It feels like it's alive. Ryan moved closer and studied the strange doorway. No marks, no hinges, no sign of an opening, he said. It doesn't look like it's made to open by force. It must respond to something else. Laro knelt and placed a small sound emitter on the ground. I think this door reacts to sound, he said. When I tested the tones earlier, the vibrations matched this part of the wall. He adjusted the controls and played a low tone. The sound echoed softly across the structure. A faint vibration ran through the ground. Then a single symbol near the top of the door lit up. Mira's eyes widened. It responded. Ryan smiled slightly. Then we'll try again. Play the next tone. Laro changed the frequency. Another sound filled the air, higher and clearer than before. The second symbol glowed. Then a third. Each tone unlocked a new light, as if they were pressing invisible keys in the right order. But after the fourth sound, the lights went dark again. The vibration stopped. The desert returned to silence. It stopped, Mira said. Laro frowned. Maybe the pattern was wrong, Ryan thought for a moment. No, I think it's asking for a sequence, a melody. It's not just tones. It's a song. The idea made sense. The entire desert was filled with natural sound patterns. The tomb could be designed to respond to a specific tune. The problem was finding the right one. They spent the next several hours testing different frequencies. Laro tried playing soft sequences while Mira adjusted the sensors. The desert air shimmered each time a new sound echoed through the pit. Some tones caused the cymbals to flicker. Others caused the sand nearby to shift slightly. But nothing fully activated the door. The sun began to set. The sky turned deep red, and long shadows stretched across the dunes. The team sat down for a short rest. They were tired but not ready to stop. Ryan looked at Laro. What do you think the song could be? Laro shook his head. It feels familiar, like something I've heard before, but I can't place it. Mira smiled faintly. Maybe it's the sound of the wind. The desert itself might be part of the melody. Ryan thought about it. The desert had been singing long before they arrived. Maybe the sound outside was part of the key. He stood up and listened carefully. The night wind had started to blow again, carrying a low, continuous hum. He turned to Laro. Try matching your tones with the wind, he said. Follow its rhythm, Laro nodded. He stood near the doorway and closed his eyes. He listened to the hum of the desert, the faint vibrations beneath the sand and the gentle whisper of the night. Slowly, he began to hum softly, letting his voice blend with the wind. The sound rose and fell naturally. At first, nothing happened. Then the first symbol lit up again, brighter than before. Laro continued humming, adding more notes. The second and third symbols glowed in perfect rhythm. The sand around the door began to move, shifting as if stirred by unseen hands. Mira gasped. It's working. Ryan watched carefully. Keep going, Laro, don't stop. Laro's humming became deeper and more controlled. The glowing patterns spread across the surface of the door, forming a spiral of light. The ground shook slightly. The air was filled with a soft but powerful vibration. The melody reached its final note. The center of the door split open, revealing a narrow gap filled with shimmering light. The vibration stopped, replaced by a deep silence that felt heavier than sound itself. Then, slowly, the two halves of the door slid apart. Warm air rushed out from inside the chamber. A dim, golden glow spread across the pit, lighting the faces of the crew. They stared into the opening. Inside was darkness, but it was not empty. The air shimmered faintly, and faint echoes drifted out like the memory of ancient voices. Ryan stepped forward cautiously. Lights on, he said. Mira and Dima turned on their lamps. The beams cut through the darkness, revealing a long passageway made of black stone. The walls were covered with carvings that reflected the light like mirrors. Each carving looked like a symbol of sound, circles and waves, shapes that reminded Ryan of musical notes frozen in stone. Laro whispered softly. It's beautiful. The team moved slowly inside. The air was cooler but strangely dry. Their footsteps echoed in strange ways. The sound didn't fade as it should have. Instead, it lingered, bending and returning like an echo that refused to die. Ryan stopped and clapped his hands once. The echo repeated perfectly, but it sounded different, as if someone else had clapped back from deeper within the passage. Mira shivered. That wasn't you. Ryan stayed calm. Sound reflection. The walls are designed for it. They carry sound perfectly. Every tone stays alive here. As they walked farther, The hum from the desert faded behind them. New sounds took its place, soft vibrations and faint musical notes hidden in the air. It was as if the tomb itself was singing quietly to welcome them. They reached a large chamber with a high ceiling. In the center stood tall crystal columns arranged in a circle. Each column glowed faintly and gave off a distinct tone. When the team approached, the tones changed slightly, matching their movement. Laro touched one of the crystals gently. It responded with a soft, warm vibration. "These are sound resonators," he said. "The builders used sound to power this place." Ryan walked slowly around the chamber, examining the carvings on the walls. They showed figures that looked half human and half insect, standing before large instruments. Their arms were raised as if they were conducting a great symphony. Above them were symbols that looked like stars. Mira ran her fingers over one of the carvings. "These people built this long before us," she said softly. "Maybe they wanted their voices to last forever." Ryan nodded. And they succeeded. The chamber's air suddenly shifted. A low, deep tone filled the space, vibrating through the floor. The crystal columns began to glow brighter, one by one. The sound grew louder until the entire room hummed with power. Dima stepped back nervously. "What's happening?" Ryan looked around. "The tomb is reacting again. It knows we're here." The glowing light from the columns rose to the ceiling, forming patterns that danced like living symbols. The entire chamber felt alive, filled with energy older than any human creation. The sound was not chaotic. It was a song calm and steady, carrying emotion that no words could describe. Laro listened closely. "It's speaking," he said. "I can almost hear words inside the tones." Ryan stood silently, feeling the deep vibration run through his chest. The song of the desert had led them here. And now the tomb itself had opened its voice. Far above, the dunes of Arion trembled softly. The wind carried a new note across the desert, one that no one had heard before. It was not only the song of the past anymore. It was the beginning of a new voice joining it. The air inside the tomb felt thick and ancient. The deeper the team walked, the more alive the place seemed. Every step they took sent soft echoes through the halls, as if unseen voices whispered back. The light from their lamps danced on the polished walls, revealing carvings of strange creatures and symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. Ryan led the group forward, scanning the carvings with his handheld device. The readings showed traces of energy still flowing through the stone. "This place has power," he said quietly. "It has been asleep for centuries, maybe longer, but the energy network still works." Mira followed closely behind, studying the carvings. The images showed tall figures standing around a great sphere of light. Beneath them were smaller figures bowing, and above them were stars arranged in spiral shapes. "These symbols tell a story," she said. "It looks like they were a civilization that worshipped sound and light." Laro walked at the edge of the group, his eyes moving from one glowing pattern to another. The sound that filled the air was calm but layered. It was not noise. It was harmony, like 1,000 voices singing the same soft tune. He could feel it in his chest, as if the tomb was trying to speak through vibration. They entered another chamber, larger than the first. The ceiling rose high, covered in crystal dust that shimmered faintly like a night sky. In the center stood a raised platform surrounded by circular steps. On top of the platform rested a structure that looked like a huge crystal sphere divided by thin metallic lines. The sphere pulsed with a slow rhythm, glowing brighter each time it released a tone. "This must be the source," Ryan said. He placed his scanner on the platform. The readings spiked instantly. "It's producing controlled sound waves. The frequencies are too precise to be natural." Laro approached carefully. "It feels like it's breathing," he said. Ryan nodded. "It could be storing information in sound waves, like an archive made of tones instead of words." Mira smiled softly. "A memory that sings." They examined the platform from all sides. Small panels were carved into the floor, each marked with unique symbols. Mira knelt and traced her fingers across one. It vibrated faintly under her touch and produced a single tone that echoed across the chamber. The tone was pure and steady, but after a moment another tone answered it from somewhere deep within the tomb. The sound continued back and forth like a call and response. It was as if the tomb itself was waking up, remembering its old language. Ryan listened closely. "It's repeating a pattern. Maybe it's a message." He recorded the tones and played them back at a slower speed. The notes turned into a sequence that almost resembled words. Not in any known language, but the rhythm was careful and deliberate. It carried emotion. "This is not random," Ryan said. "Someone wanted to be heard." The crew moved around the chamber, activating more panels. Each one produced a different tone, and together they formed layers of sound that filled the air like a living choir. The walls glowed brighter and the cymbals began to move slightly, shifting with the rhythm. Then Laro stopped suddenly. He raised his hand for silence. "Listen," he said. Among the waves of tones, faint voices could now be heard. They were not clear words but murmurs, overlapping and echoing as if thousands of whispers were trapped within the stone. The sound carried sadness and pride at the same time, as though it was telling a story of both greatness and loss. Mira stepped closer to one of the walls and placed her palm on it. The wall vibrated softly under her hand and she could feel the pattern of the voices. It was like touching the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. She whispered, "It's them, the ones who built this place. Their voices are still here." Ryan watched her quietly. They left their memories inside the tomb. Every stone, every sound carries a part of their story. He connected his scanner to the sound emitter. The data began forming images on his screen, wave patterns that resembled faces and symbols. It was the tomb's way of recording memory through vibration. Each sound stored an image, and each image held a part of their civilization's history. As they studied the recordings, the same repeating phrase began to appear in every section. Ryan translated the pattern into words using a linguistic algorithm. When the result appeared, everyone stood silently. The translation read, "We called the stars our home, but the silence took us." Mira looked at Ryan. "They died," she said softly. "Their world fell silent," Ryan nodded. "Yes, but they wanted someone to remember them." The chamber's light dimmed for a moment, and the tones faded to a low hum. The air felt heavier. A sudden tremor ran through the floor. The sand above shifted slightly, sending fine dust down from the ceiling. Dima stepped back nervously. "What was that?" Ryan looked around. "The tomb is reacting. Maybe it knows we're accessing its core." The humming grew louder again, forming new tones. Laro's expression changed. "It's changing the pattern," he said. "It's responding to us now." He listened carefully. The tones were not random. They were forming a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. Slowly, Laro began to hum along, matching the new pattern. The walls glowed brighter, and the carvings near the crystal sphere began to shift, revealing new symbols underneath. Mira pointed at the floor. "It's opening something." A section of the platform split apart, revealing a spiral staircase leading down into deeper darkness. From below came a soft, continuous sound like distant singing. Rian looked at his team. "We're going down," he said. "Whatever is left of their story lies beneath." The group descended carefully. The air grew colder. The stone walls were smoother here, almost glass-like. The sound was clearer now, flowing through the space like water. Each step they took added an echo to the song, as if the tomb welcomed them deeper into its memory. They reached another chamber, smaller but filled with light. At the center floated a ring of transparent stones slowly spinning around a small pedestal. The stones glowed softly and emitted soft voices that overlapped beautifully. The language was old, but the emotion was clear, sorrow mixed with hope. Laro stepped closer. "It's a message of farewell," he said quietly. Ryan placed his hand near one of the stones. "Let's record it." When he activated the recorder, the stones pulsed faster. A beam of light projected from the center, forming shapes in the air. The projection showed the same insect-like figures they had seen on the walls. They stood in front of a dying world, its surface covered in storms and fire. The voices grew louder, rising in harmony. The images shifted to show ships leaving their planet, traveling across the stars. Then the final image showed a vast desert, 2 suns shining above it, the same desert they were standing in now. Mira whispered, "They came here." Ryan nodded. "They came to Arian, and this tomb is their final message." The projection faded, leaving only the soft hum again. The stones slowly stopped spinning. The chamber fell silent, but it was not the silence of death. It was the calm silence that follows a song once it has ended. The team stood quietly, feeling both sadness and awe. They had discovered not just an ancient civilization, but also the proof that humanity was not alone in its struggle to survive. These beings had reached across time to leave their story for whoever came after. Rian spoke softly. "They wanted to be remembered, and now they will be." Their voice didn't die. "We found it." As they prepared to return to the upper chamber, the floor vibrated once again, stronger this time. The sand above must have shifted again. The sound that filled the air was no longer calm. It carried urgency. Laro looked toward the passage they came from. "The tomb is not done with us," he said. "It's trying to show more." Ryan hesitated. "We'll see what it wants." But carefully. They began to climb back up, their lights flickering against the stone. Behind them, the faint song continued as if 1,000 ancient souls were singing from beyond time. The sound followed them, filling the tunnels, wrapping around them like a living memory. When they reached the upper chamber, the crystal sphere pulsed again, brighter than before. The tones became louder, forming a complete melody. It was the same song the desert had been singing since the beginning of their journey. The desert outside began to tremble, and the wind carried the melody across the dunes. The sands were now part of the tomb's voice, joining in a chorus that filled the night sky. Ryan listened, understanding at last that the tomb was not only a monument, but a bridge between two species. The forgotten builders had left their song behind, and humanity had become the one to answer it. The tomb had remembered, and now so would humankind. The wind outside the tomb had changed. It no longer carried the calm song of the desert. Now it pulsed with energy, sending short bursts of sound that made the dunes tremble. The crew inside felt the vibration even through the thick stone walls. It was as if the entire desert had started to breathe. Ryan stood near the glowing crystal sphere, watching as its light shifted from gold to pale blue. The rhythm had become faster. Every pulse seemed to echo through his chest like a heartbeat. "It's reacting to the recordings," he said. "Our presence might be waking something deeper." Mira checked her scanner. The readings showed strong waves of energy rising from beneath the platform. "Whatever's down there, it's not dead," she said. "The readings are climbing every second." Laro stood near one of the resonating columns, listening to the changing tones. "It's not angry," he said softly. "It sounds curious, like it's trying to remember who we are." The chamber lights flickered again. Thin beams of light formed patterns in the air. They moved slowly, drawing shapes that looked like musical symbols mixed with star maps. Ryan realized the lights were data streams. The tomb was communicating using the only language it knew, sound and pattern. He turned to Mira. "Can you capture this and translate it into a visual code?" She nodded and began working quickly. Her screen filled with spinning diagrams and color shifts as she matched the tones to the light waves. The images started forming recognizable shapes, planets, stars, and long paths between them. It was a map of the builders' travels across the galaxy. "They crossed many worlds," Mira said. "This place was their final stop." Ryan looked at the pattern of stars. One cluster matched the known human colonies. Another cluster, however, showed systems farther beyond human reach. "They went farther than us," he said. "Much farther." The hum around them deepened. The walls began to glow brighter, and the floor under their feet shook slightly. The vibration was not violent but steady, like the sound of a machine awakening after long sleep. Dima called out from the corner. "Energy levels are spiking." "We need to be careful," Ryan agreed. "Stay ready to shut down the scanners if it overloads." The pulse from the center of the room grew stronger. The floating crystals above the sphere started to move, circling slowly in perfect rhythm. The air shimmered with heat and sound. Laro closed his eyes and listened. The melody had changed again. This time it carried new tones, tones that matched the ones the humans had spoken when they first arrived. "It's learning from us," Laro said. "It's copying our sounds and adding them to its own." Mira watched in awe. "It's communicating," Ryan nodded. "It's trying to build a bridge between its language and ours." The sound filled every corner of the tomb. Then, without warning, a beam of bright light shot upward from the sphere, passing through the ceiling and into the desert above. The team covered their eyes as the light spread like a pillar of energy, cutting through the night sky. Outside, the dunes glowed faintly under the beam. The sand seemed to rise in waves, forming shapes that looked like ripples in water. The entire desert sang in harmony, the same song that had been buried for ages now echoing across the land. Inside the tomb, the vibration reached its peak. Ryan's instruments showed readings far beyond what any human device could handle. "It's broadcasting," he said. "But to where?" Laro answered softly. "To the stars," The sound grew deeper, filled with layers upon layers of tones. It was a song of awakening, a message that carried the memory of the ancient builders and the voice of the new visitors. Humanity had joined the chorus. After a long moment, the light dimmed. The vibration softened until only a faint hum remained. The chamber returned to calm, but everything felt different. The air was warmer, and the energy still flowed gently through the walls. Mira looked at the sphere. It's stable again. Ryan exhaled slowly. Whatever signal it sent, it's done now. Laro removed his headset. It was a message, he said. A final note added to their song. We completed it. The crew stood silently, letting the reality sink in. They had become part of something far older than their own species. They had reawakened a memory that had been waiting for someone to hear it again. But their moment of calm did not last long. The scanners began to flash new warnings. Mira checked the readings and frowned. There's movement below the lower chamber. Something is activating down there. Ryan looked toward the spiral staircase. Let's see what it is. Stay alert. They descended once more, their lamp shining against the smooth walls. The sound grew clearer again, this time carrying a deep rhythm that felt almost like speech. The lower chamber glowed faintly, and the transparent stones they had seen before were now floating higher. Spinning faster around the pedestal, a shape began to form in the center of the ring, a projection of light and color. It was not a clear image, more like a figure made of mist and sound. It pulsed gently in rhythm with the tones. Ryan took a cautious step forward. This might be an artificial consciousness, he said. A part of their memory preserved as sound energy. The figure shifted slightly and a soft voice filled the room. It was musical and layered, speaking in tones that blended into words. The crew did not understand the language, but the feeling it carried was peaceful. Laro listened closely and began to hum softly in response. The tones from the projection changed immediately, adjusting to match his pitch. It was responding to him directly. Ryan realized what was happening. It's communicating through harmony. Laro, keep going. Laro continued humming, letting his voice rise and fall gently. The figure of light grew brighter and its tones became clearer. The sound translated slowly into simple words the translator could understand. The voice said, "You are new singers. You found our resting song." Mira's eyes widened. "It understands us," Ryan asked. "Who are you?" The figure responded, "We are the memory of those who came before. Our world ended in silence. We sang to the stars so our voice would not die. You have answered the last verse of our song." The air trembled softly with every word. The voice continued, "We waited for those who could hear. Now your kind carries the same spark. You understand sound. You understand harmony. The song is yours now." Ryan listened carefully. "Are there more of your kind out there?" The figure dimmed for a moment before replying. "Our stars fell long ago, but the song travels forever. Perhaps it will reach others. It may even reach what we once were." The words filled the crew with a mix of wonder and sadness. These ancient beings had created a way to preserve themselves through music, turning memory into eternal sound. Laro's eyes were wet as he whispered, "They were never gone. They became their song." The projection pulsed once more and said, "We give you our gift, the knowledge of resonance, the power to build through sound. Carry it with care." A small crystal detached from the spinning ring and floated toward Ryan. It glowed softly and produced a steady tone that matched the heartbeat of the tomb. Ryan caught it carefully. His scanner showed streams of unreadable data flowing from it. He looked at the figure. "We will protect it, and we will remember your story." The figure flickered gently and the voice replied, "Then our purpose is complete." The light faded slowly until only the soft hum remained. The spinning stones stopped and lowered back to their original positions. The chamber returned to silence, peaceful and still. The crew stood quietly, feeling the weight of what had just happened. They had spoken to the echo of an ancient civilization. They had become part of its final song. As they climbed back to the upper chamber, the air felt different. The hum was calmer now, like a lullaby instead of a warning. The crystal in Ryan's hand continued to glow softly, and each time it pulsed, the walls responded with gentle tones. When they reached the surface, the night sky above the desert was clear. The two suns were gone, leaving behind a blanket of stars that shimmered with faint blue light. The pillar of energy was no longer there, but the air still carried its echo. Mira looked across the dunes. "Do you think anyone else heard it?" Rian gazed at the stars. If the message went far enough, someone will. Maybe even other humans across the colonies. Or something else out there. Laro listened to the wind. The sound was no longer just the old hum. Now it carried a new rhythm, one that matched his own melody. The desert is still singing, he said softly. But now it sings with us. Ryan smiled faintly. Then we have done what they wanted. We have made their silence end. As the team packed their equipment, the desert wind rose again, carrying the song farther into the horizon. The dunes glowed faintly under the starlight, and the tomb beneath them settled into calm once more, its purpose fulfilled for now. But deep below the surface, the last vibrations of the message still echoed through the stone corridors. The sound of humanity had joined the ancient harmony, and somewhere far beyond the stars, another echo began to stir. The desert morning came quietly after the long night of the awakening. The sun rose over the dunes like a golden flame, spreading light across the endless sand. The wind was calm, but the air still carried a faint hum. It was soft and steady, like the sound of a heartbeat buried deep below. The tomb beneath the dunes was no longer silent. It was alive again, whispering its ancient melody through the sands. Ryan stood outside the entrance, holding the small glowing crystal that had been given to him by the ancient voice. It pulsed slowly in his hand, warm and alive. Every pulse sent out a faint vibration that made the air around him shimmer. He knew it was not just a piece of technology. It was a piece of memory, a fragment of a civilization that had turned its knowledge into sound. Mira was busy scanning the surroundings. Her instruments showed strange readings. The sand around the tomb had changed. The grains now carried traces of energy, almost as if the desert itself had absorbed the song. The entire region is resonating, she said. The frequency matches the tones we heard inside. The tomb changed the land. Laro was sitting near the entrance, his eyes closed, listening to the desert wind. He could hear the faint echo of the song that had awakened the tomb. The melody had changed again. It now carried softer tones like a farewell. It's saying goodbye, he said quietly. Rian looked around. Maybe it knows we're leaving. They began to pack their equipment. Dima made sure the data storage was secure. They had recorded everything. The lights, the sounds, the translations. It was more than any archaeological team had ever discovered. The findings could change how humanity understood the past and the stars. Before leaving, Ryan looked once more at the stone entrance of the tomb. The carvings were glowing faintly under the sunlight, showing patterns of waves and circles. They reminded him of ripples in water. He placed his hand on the stone and felt a soft vibration. It was the same rhythm as the crystal. The tomb was still aware. Mira noticed the connection. It recognizes you, she said. The crystal and the tomb are linked. You are now part of its memory. Rian smiled faintly. Then maybe it will remember humanity as part of its song. They loaded their vehicles and began their journey back to the research camp, several kilometers away. As they moved through the dunes, the wind carried the hum with them, following their trail. It was almost comforting, like a companion that refused to let them go. When they reached the camp, the rest of the research crew gathered around, eager to hear what had happened inside. Ryan explained everything, from the discovery of the singing chamber to the awakening of the ancient consciousness. He played a recording of the song. The melody filled the air, calm and deep, and even those who had not entered the tomb could feel the emotion in it. It was both ancient and new, both alien and familiar. One of the engineers, Taryn, listened carefully and said, "That sound is beautiful." "It feels alive," Ryan nodded. "It is alive. It's a memory turned into sound." The crystal pulsed again, responding to the recording. The hum spread through the camp, vibrating gently through the equipment. Mira watched the readings. "It's connecting," she said. "It recognizes the playback. It's syncing with our devices." Slowly, the lights in their machines began to flicker in the same rhythm as the crystal. The energy patterns matched perfectly. Dima stared at the monitors. "It's teaching our systems how to use resonance. Look at the data flow." Ryan realized what was happening. "It's sharing knowledge. The same gift the ancient voice promised us." Over the next few hours, the team worked carefully, decoding the signals the crystal sent. The data showed designs for structures, patterns of energy flow, and harmonic equations that could generate power through sound. It was a new kind of science, one that combined physics and music, vibration and structure. This could change everything, Mira said. Energy without fuel. Machines that move through resonance. Communication that never fades, Laro smiled softly. The builders wanted us to continue their song. Now we can. As they prepared to send the first report to the orbital base, the crystal pulsed brighter than before. The hum grew stronger, echoing across the desert. Then, from far away, the sound of another tone answered. Everyone froze. The response came from the horizon beyond the dunes. It was faint but clear. Another harmonic wave was traveling toward them. Mira checked her instruments. It's the same frequency as the tomb. Something else out there is responding. Ryan's heart raced. There could be another tomb, or another beacon. The team quickly scanned the direction of the sound. The sensors detected faint energy patterns spreading from the far edge of the desert, near the rocky cliffs. It was too far to reach immediately, but the signal was growing stronger every minute. Dima looked at Ryan. Should we follow it? Ryan hesitated. If it's another site, it could be dangerous. But if we ignore it, we might lose our chance to understand the full network. Mira placed her hand on his shoulder. The first tomb trusted us. Maybe this one will too. He nodded slowly. Then we go. They prepared a small exploration team and loaded the supplies. The sun was already high, turning the dunes into waves of gold and heat. As they drove toward the signal, the hum from the crystal grew louder, guiding them like a compass. After several hours, they reached the cliffs. There, hidden among the rocks, they found another entrance half buried in the sand. It was smaller than the first tomb, but carried the same carvings, the same wave patterns and circles. The air around it shimmered with faint blue light. Rian stepped closer, holding the crystal in front of him. The light from the carvings brightened instantly. The entrance opened with a low tone, and the sand shifted away like water moving aside. Inside, the chamber was darker and colder. The walls were smooth and curved, but this place felt different. The hum was softer, almost sad. At the center stood a single column of stone with carvings that looked like lines of music. The crystal pulsed faster as Ryan approached. The tones in the room responded, forming a melody that matched the one from the first tomb. The air began to glow faintly. Mira whispered, "It's another memory." The tone deepened and a soft voice filled the chamber. "You have heard our song. You answered the call. You carry the harmony forward." The sound filled every corner of the chamber. Then the voice continued, "The song of the sands is complete. The cycle is fulfilled." Ryan understood. The second tomb was the final part of the message. The first had awakened the memory, and this one was closing the ancient circle. The ground trembled slightly as energy flowed between the two tombs. The sand outside began to glow, forming a long line of light that connected both sites. The entire desert turned into a field of soft blue waves, moving in rhythm with the tone. The voice spoke again. "Your kind will sing to the stars now. The silence ends with you." Then the light began to fade. The humming slowed until it became a calm whisper in the wind. The chamber's glow softened and the carving stopped shining. The second tomb had passed its final message. Rian stood silently, feeling the meaning of those words. Humanity had been chosen not just to find the song, but to continue it. When they returned to the camp, the entire team watched as the sand continued to shimmer under the sunlight. The hum remained faint but constant, spreading through the air like a quiet heartbeat. That night, as the two moons rose above the horizon, Rian sat outside the tent, looking at the stars. The crystal rested in his hand, glowing gently. He could hear the melody inside his mind, soft and endless. It was no longer the song of the ancient builders alone. It was also the song of humanity. Laro joined him, carrying a small musical device. He began to play the same tones the tomb had taught them. The sound blended perfectly with the desert wind. Rian smiled. "Now the sands sing with us." Mira stepped out, hearing the melody. "And maybe the stars too," she said. As the night grew deeper, the hum spread farther into the distance, carried by the wind to the farthest dunes and beyond the horizon. The tombs beneath the sands were silent once more, but their song lived on in those who had heard it. Far above, in the cold space beyond the planet, human satellites caught faint echoes of harmonic waves leaving the atmosphere, moving toward the distant stars. Somewhere far away, another ancient signal stirred, awakened by the human song. The desert rested peacefully under the twin moons. The sands no longer sang alone. Humanity had joined the chorus of the cosmos, carrying the melody of life into the endless night. And beneath the dunes, the tomb's heart beat softly in rhythm with the stars, waiting for the next voice to answer its eternal song.